Across the Atlantic, massive machines glide through endless American fields, red radishes, blueberries, sugarcane, each harvest measured in tons and dollars. Precision, efficiency, progress. But now, a new question rises far from these steel horizons in the dry heart of West Africa, where every grain of millet and every drop of water carries the weight of independence. The United States spends over $170 billion a year cultivating the world's food through 900 million acres of mechanized farmland. Meanwhile, nations like Burkina Faso are fighting for something far deeper than yield sovereignty. Who controls the seed? Who owns the machines? And who collects the data flowing from the soil to the satellites above? Because in the 21st century, food is no longer just about feeding people, it's about power. And as the world shifts, one young African nation is daring to ask the most dangerous question of all. Can a country truly be free if it cannot feed itself? From the skies, America's farmlands look like a perfect machine. Every harvest time tracked and tuned, corn, soybeans, and wheat moving in mechanical rhythm. A John Deere GPS tractor in Arizona can plow 20 hectares an hour with an accuracy of 2 centimeters. In California's Central Valley, a single tomato harvester can replace hundreds of workers collecting 60 tons of fruit per hour. This is modern agriculture, a choreography between man and machine forged by data precision and billions of dollars in infrastructure. It feeds the world, but it also reveals a truth. Whoever owns the machines owns the means of production itself. Now, contrast that with Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation in the Sahel where most farmers still rely on hand tools, animal plows, and unpredictable rains. Yet something extraordinary is happening there. For the first time in decades, small cooperatives are experimenting with shared tractors, solar-powered irrigation, and digital grain tracking. Not for profit, but for independence. In Wahiguya, a group of young farmers recently pooled their savings to buy a used mini-tractor from Ghana. It's not new. It's not fancy. But it works. And for them, it's not just a machine, it's a statement. We can till our own soil without waiting for anyone's permission. Here's the paradox. Mechanization can double output, but it can also deepen dependence. Each imported machine demands fuel, spare parts, and software updates, all priced in foreign currencies. One broken sensor, one embargo, one delayed shipment, and the entire system can collapse. In contrast, the fields of Burkina Faso, though slower, hold a different kind of power resilience. Seeds saved from previous harvests, soil enriched with compost irrigation guided by local knowledge. It's less about efficiency and more about control. Because when a farmer cannot repair his own tractor, or when the seeds he plants belong to a foreign patent, his independence becomes an illusion. And yet, the world measures success by yield per acre, not sovereignty per acre. So the question is, can Burkina Faso modernize without surrendering its freedom? That's the quiet battle unfolding across Africa today, not one of weapons or politics, but of seeds, software, and sovereignty. And it's a battle that every global power is watching closely, including the United States. Because in a future shaped by climate shocks and food scarcity, whoever controls production will control peace itself. Now, just ahead, a hidden layer to this story. Behind every harvest lies an invisible network. The patents, the supply chains, the financing contracts that decide who really profits from the soil. You're about to see how something as small as a seed or as simple as a repair manual can determine whether a nation stays free or falls into quiet dependence. Stay with us. The next few minutes will reveal the evidence that many prefer to keep buried. And if you want to follow this investigation into the global food power game, don't forget to subscribe. Behind every machine in the field lies something more powerful than steel control. Control over what gets planted, who owns the seeds, and who receives the data harvested from the soil. In the United States, precision farming is now guided by satellite-linked tractors and cloud-based analytics. Every square meter of farmland can be scanned, mapped, and optimized. It looks like progress, and it is. But it's also a system built on dependence. Farmers pay annual subscriptions for GPS correction data storage and even access to software updates. Many can no longer repair their own tractors because the code that runs them is locked behind corporate encryption. Now imagine that same model exported into Africa, where machines, seeds, and credit often come in one single package tied to foreign suppliers. It's a system that promises efficiency, but quietly transfers power outward. According to a 2024 FAO report, over 65% of African agricultural inputs from seeds to fertilizer are imported. Most digital farm platforms operating on the continent are hosted overseas. The data collected from African fields often flows into foreign servers before being analyzed and resold back to local governments. So while the farmer tills his land someone thousands of miles away, profits from his numbers, rainfall, soil type, yield forecast, the building blocks of food security itself. In Burkina Faso, the stakes are even higher. The country's government under Captain Ibrahim Traoré has declared food sovereignty a matter of national security. No longer just about feeding people, it's about protecting the right to produce, to own, and to decide. Documents from the Ministry of Agriculture reveal an ambitious plan to phase out dependency on foreign hybrid seeds within 5 years and to establish a national seed bank for indigenous varieties, millet, sorghum, cowpea crops adapted to heat and drought, the true guardians of the Sahel. But there's resistance. International lenders warn that such independence could limit competitiveness. Seed corporations argue that hybrid imports are the only way to achieve large-scale yields, and development agencies continue to promote packages that mix equipment loans with patented seeds, a combination that ties both the farmer and the nation to perpetual repayment. Here lies the hidden mechanism of control: the financial seed loop. Money for machines comes with conditions: who supplies, who maintains, and who collects the data. A tractor may last 10 years, but the software contract behind it lasts forever. And yet, even amid these constraints, something new is emerging in Burkina Faso: a countermodel. Local engineers are refurbishing small tractors and fabricating spare parts from recycled metals. Universities are developing open-source irrigation sensors powered by solar energy. And for the first time, farmer cooperatives are negotiating contracts that include a clause rarely seen before: the right to repair. That simple clause means freedom, the ability to fix, modify, and improve technology without corporate permission. It's the same principle that shaped the early industrial revolutions of America. Because sovereignty, in essence, is the right to say no and still move forward. So we return to the question: if technology defines modern agriculture, how can a nation use it without being owned by it? This new African movement from seed saving to open source software might just be the blueprint for that answer. But one question remains unresolved, perhaps the most difficult of all. Even if Burkina Faso builds local systems, who will finance them? Can a young nation free itself from dependency while still playing inside a global market shaped by credit and capital? That question about the money behind food independence is where the real story begins. Up next, we'll uncover how every tractor, every irrigation system, and every grain silo hides a financial contract, and how those contracts decide who eats, who profits, and who stays free. When Ibrahim Traoré stood before the nation and declared, "We will not eat what we do not grow. We will not depend on those who decide what we plant," many dismissed it as symbolism. But inside Burkina Faso, those words landed like a spark in dry grass. Across villages from Bobo Dioulasso to Koudougou, farmers began organizing in new ways. They were not waiting for aid anymore, they were forming cooperatives, pooling land, water, and fuel to regain control of production. In the north, a collective of 32 young farmers repaired a broken irrigation pump that had been abandoned for years. Using recycled parts and online blueprints, they brought it back to life and named it Independence. It irrigated 40 hectares through the next season, enough to feed hundreds of families. Inside Ouagadougou's Ministry of Agriculture, officials began drawing lines on a map: irrigation zones, seed corridors, grain depots, and infrastructure of sovereignty. Traoré's government knows that no revolution survives without food. So they call it the second liberation, not from colonizers, but from dependency. Still outside Burkina Faso, the reactions were swift. In West Africa, some governments quietly watched, others worried. Leaders of ECOWAS warned that breaking away from traditional supply chains might isolate Burkina Faso economically. Yet in Niger and Mali, the idea resonated deeply. Shared droughts, shared ambitions. Across Sahelian radio waves, the phrase, "Feed your people, free your land," began to echo. From Europe, agricultural corporations issued statements praising regional modernization, but between the lines came pressure: concerns over market stability, calls for seed certification standards, offers of partnership that looked suspiciously like control. From the United States, officials expressed cautious interest. Washington sees Burkina Faso's path as both opportunity and risk opportunity in open markets for technology risk in a rising movement that questions global supply hierarchies. For decades, the U.S. exported agricultural power tractors, hybrids, algorithms. Now it faces a new proposition, a continent seeking to stand on its own soil. Meanwhile, on the ground, ordinary farmers are writing a quieter story. Take Issa Zongo, 29 years old, father of two farming millet and beans outside Kaya. He used to rent equipment from a private dealer in exchange for half of his harvest. Now, through a local cooperative, he shares access to a mini tractor purchased collectively. When asked what changed, he smiled and said, "Before I worked for others. Now I work for my children." That sentence carries more weight than any policy. And yet, the challenge remains colossal. Mechanization, irrigation, storage all need capital. Burkina Faso's annual agricultural budget barely covers maintenance of rural roads. Without investment, the dream risks collapsing under its own hope. Foreign loans. They exist, but with fine print interest rates, procurement clauses, and data-sharing conditions. Every deal brings the risk of losing what Traoré's government is trying to build: self-determination. So the leadership faces an impossible balance. Accept foreign capital and risk control, or refuse it and slow the revolution. This is where the tension turns personal. In rural meetings, farmers debate whether they should take microloans to buy machinery. Some argue that progress demands risk. Others warn that debt is just another chain. As one farmer in Tenkodogo put it, "They want to lend us money to buy the rope, and they will sell us the rope again when it breaks." These words echo through the dusty Sahel air, heavy and real. Burkina Faso's push for food sovereignty has begun to inspire other nations, but also to unnerve those who benefit from dependency. Every hectare reclaimed from import reliance is a hectare pulled away from global control. Still, amid the optimism, there's a shadow. No one fully understands where the money actually flows. Because even as Burkina Faso invests in co-ops and community silos, millions in export earnings from gold, cotton, and minerals still flow outward through foreign banks and intermediaries. So the question deepens. If the nation earns through its soil but cannot use that wealth to feed its people, who truly profits from Burkina Faso's harvest? Stay with us, because in the next few minutes, a set of financial documents and trade patterns will reveal a paradox few have dared to confront. Burkina Faso's fields are turning green again, millet rising through red dust, irrigation lines glistening in the sun. But beneath that revival runs another current, invisible and silent: the money. Because for every tractor rolling through the Sahel, there's a wire transfer leaving the country. And where that money goes, few truly know. In a confidential trade report leaked last year, auditors traced nearly $2 billion in resource revenues, gold, manganese, and cotton, that left Burkina Faso through complex export channels. Officially, it was payment for technical services and logistics. Unofficially, it's a pattern: capital flowing outward faster than crops can grow. And yet the same companies that process those exports often reappear, this time offering agricultural partnerships. They bring equipment, fertilizers, digital platforms, financed, of course, by the very money that left. It's a loop. The resource trap 2.0: raw wealth leaves, technology returns, but control stays abroad. For a nation trying to feed itself, that's not partnership, it's dependence dressed as progress. Inside Ouagadougou, economic advisors whisper that some of these contracts were inherited from decades past, signed under pressure, written in currencies that the country doesn't control. The fine print grants external access to data from agricultural satellites and harvest analytics, all under the clause of technical monitoring. So, while the nation celebrates record yields, someone else somewhere else reads the numbers first. A senior official speaking anonymously put it bluntly: "We export our gold to buy our wheat. We send our data to pay for our machines. And when the network goes down, we can't even fix it ourselves." That single sentence captures the new colonial equation, not through armies, but through algorithms. And here comes the paradox that no one has dared to name publicly. Could Burkina Faso's greatest vulnerability be hidden inside its own recovery? Because if the wealth that funds food security leaves faster than the food can grow, the revolution could be feeding itself to death. The evidence points to a handful of multinational intermediaries and offshore accounts. But the trail is murky, buried under trade codes and consultancy fees. Still, one document stands out: a 47-page memorandum titled Sustainable Agricultural Integration Framework. It outlines how regional financial alignment can ensure long-term technological partnership, corporate language for indefinite control. Who signed it when? and under what pressure no one in the ministry will say. But in the next segment, we'll break the silence because hidden inside those contracts lies the blueprint of dependency and the data that might just expose who really owns Burkina Faso's harvest. The document was found in the archives of a regional development bank, 47 pages of bureaucratic calm that concealed something extraordinary. Page 18, Clause 4.2. All agricultural data generated through supported technologies shall be stored and managed by the primary financial partner. That means every soil scan, every harvest log, every drone image collected through foreign-funded programs, all of it belongs not to Burkina Faso but to the lender. It's not theft, it's contract law, and it's perfectly legal. This was the invisible cost of aid ownership of information. In an age when data defines markets, this clause is more valuable than gold. Once the findings were leaked, a small group of agronomists and legal experts inside Ouagadougou began drafting a response, the Sovereign Ag Stack. 5 layers of protection for a national agriculture seeds. Machines, water data, and finance. The blueprint is simple but radical. Each layer must remain at least 51% nationally controlled. Open-source hardware where possible, public data repositories, and a right-to-repair charter for all imported machinery. It's a framework designed not for isolation but for balanced cooperation without surrender. Burkina Faso's universities and co-ops began piloting it quietly. In Koudougou, a local engineering workshop printed replacement parts for imported mini-tractors using 3D models shared through open libraries. In Ouahigouya, technicians retrofitted drones with local firmware, cutting maintenance costs by 60%. And across the Sahel belt, new seed houses began archiving indigenous millet and cowpea varieties. A living memory of biodiversity. For the first time, Burkina Faso wasn't just buying tools. It was rewriting the rules. But the backlash came fast. Critics from international agencies called the policy protectionist. Analysts in Paris warned it could isolate the Burkinabe market and discourage investors. An editorial in a major financial daily even suggested that sovereign control would make African agriculture technologically stagnant. Traoré's administration fired back with numbers. In pilot regions using mixed tech and indigenous seeds, yields rose 18%, while import dependency fell 25% within 1 year. Maintenance costs dropped because local mechanics, not foreign technicians, handled repairs. It wasn't just ideology, it was math. Still, the argument runs deeper than economics. It's about dignity, the right to decide how to grow, repair, and share your own food. And this right is now under quiet attack, not through sanctions or soldiers, but through software. Several global manufacturers are now embedding cloud lock features into their equipment, preventing machines from running offline unless they sync to remote servers. For farmers in the Sahel where connectivity is fragile, that's not convenience, it's captivity. Burkina Faso is pushing back, proposing a right to operate offline clause for all imported agricultural equipment. If passed, it would be the first law of its kind in Africa, and one of the boldest assertions of digital sovereignty in the world. When asked about the growing resistance, a Western consultant replied, "These policies are emotional. Agriculture is global. No one can go it alone." But maybe that's the point. Burkina Faso isn't trying to go it alone. It's trying to stand on its own. And that's precisely what unsettles the system built on dependence. Because if a small landlocked country can reclaim its food chain from seed to satellite, it sets a precedent far beyond Africa. It says that sovereignty isn't a slogan. It's a system design. So here we arrive at a new frontier: data as soil. The field no longer ends at the fence. It extends into the cloud. And whoever owns the data owns the future harvests. Which raises the next question, the one every nation will soon face. If your food is grown on your land, but your data is stored in someone else's cloud, who does it really belong to? In the next act, we'll look at how Burkina Faso is turning that question into action, building digital independence, reimagining finance, and transforming food security into national security. The revolution of the soil is not fought with slogans. It is fought with systems built one field, one family, one dataset at a time. In the western city of Bobo Dioulasso, the morning light touches rows of freshly irrigated vegetable gardens. Here, you meet Awa Diallo, a mother of 3 and head of the local machine-sharing cooperative. Her hands are calloused, her voice calm. When the cooperative's first mini-tractor arrived, the village celebrated like it was a new birth. Each family pays only for the hours they use. Every repair record, fuel log, and yield report is stored locally on a solar-powered tablet locked inside Awa's office. She smiles when asked about ownership. We don't own the machine. We own the knowledge of how to fix it. That's more important. Her cooperative has already reduced post-harvest losses by 40%, and the women now sell vegetables through a digital platform designed by a Burkinabe developers, not imported software. Their sales data feed directly into a national food dashboard, giving the ministry real-time insight into prices, storage, and supply gaps. For the first time, the numbers belong to the people who create them. Across the Sahel, similar initiatives are rising like green shoots after rain. In Kaya, farmers are experimenting with blockchain-backed grain receipts that prevent middlemen from manipulating prices. In Uwahiguya, engineers are deploying open-source irrigation controllers. No subscriptions, no remote shutdowns. And in Fada Ngorma, communities are building solar-powered data barns, physical servers that host local agricultural databases, offline, sovereign, secure. It's not the shiny version of technology the West likes to showcase. It's modest, patchworked, resilient, appropriate technology for independence. And the results are starting to show. Regional food imports have fallen for 2 consecutive years. Rural incomes are slowly rising. Most importantly, confidence that invisible fuel of nations is returning. Inside the presidential palace, advisors speak of food security as national security. It's not a slogan, it's policy. Because when you can feed yourself, no embargo, no threat, no digital lock can bring you to your knees. Still, the transformation is fragile. One bad season, one external shock could unravel it. But for now, the people believe, and that belief is power. When asked if she trusts the government's plan, Awa Diallo pauses. She looks at her field, the soil dark with water, and says, "We're not waiting for miracles anymore. We're building them." That sentence may sound simple, but it carries the weight of an entire continent. Across the Sahel, neighboring countries are watching. Niger is replicating Burkina's co-op tractor model. Mali is adopting its seed bank system. And in Ghana and Senegal, policymakers are studying how to integrate data sovereignty clauses into agricultural trade deals. If this movement spreads, it could reshape Africa's relationship with global markets, not by closing doors, but by changing the terms. Because independence isn't isolation. It's negotiation from strength. For the United States and its allies, this presents both challenge and opportunity. A self-reliant Africa would no longer be a passive importer of technology, but a partner, one that demands respect, fair trade, and shared data. And that's what makes Burkina Faso's model so powerful. It doesn't reject modernity, it redefines it. From the outside, it looks like small victories. A repaired pump, a shared tractor, a database running on solar power. But look closer and you'll see something larger, a system of dignity taking root in the soil. So as Awa's children run through the garden rows, the camera pulls back wide, sunlit alive. The revolution isn't in the capital anymore. It's here in the quiet hum of machines built to serve people, not replace them. And yet, as progress blooms, a new question rises, one that stretches beyond borders. If Africa rebuilds its food sovereignty, how will the global balance of power shift? Will nations built on export dependence adapt or resist? Because this time, the harvest isn't just crops, it's control. In the final chapter, we'll step back to see what this means not just for Burkina Faso, but for Africa, for America, and for the world still bound by hunger and hierarchy. Across the quiet plains of the Sahel, the sun sets over a nation still working its soil. In those fading rays, you can almost see the 3 layers of this new revolution. At home, it's about ownership. Burkina Faso is learning that sovereignty isn't a word, it's a daily act. Every seed saved, every tool repaired, every byte of data kept within the nation's borders is a declaration. We are the authors of our own harvest. Across the region, it's about solidarity. Nations once divided by colonial borders are now connecting through irrigation networks, grain corridors, and shared data platforms. It's not a military alliance, it's an agricultural one built on trust and common survival. A new kind of unity is forming, rooted in the soil, not imposed from above. And globally, it's about balance. For too long, food has been traded like a weapon, dependence used as leverage. But if Africa can feed itself, it changes the equation. Trade becomes dialogue, not dominance. Aid becomes partnership, not control. The implications reach far beyond Africa. A more self-reliant continent means a more stable world, fewer crises, fewer migrations, fewer wars born from hunger. That's not just an African victory, it's a human one. Still, the struggle continues. The machines are old, the climate is harsh, the markets remain unfair. But something irreversible has begun, a quiet confidence rising from the dust. A new voice is saying, "We will not be defined by need. We will define our own abundance." And that voice, echoing through millet fields and university labs, through co-ops and ministries, is no longer asking for permission. It's claiming its place. If you believe that freedom begins with the right to feed yourself, stay with us. Because the next story goes even deeper inside the new front line of independence: the right to repair, the right to own data, and the right to decide the future of food. Subscribe, stay tuned, and remember, Africa bows to no one.